So welcome everybody to the Uno Reverse talk, where we expose threat actors getting played at their own game, basically. And that's why it's Uno Reverse. So even though they operated some kind of malware, they still got infected by, you guessed it, another malware. So a bit about me, a mathematics and criminology background, and today I will present to you the content under the format of a class, the ObSec 101 class for first-year threat actors. A bit of context before we start the class on what is an infostealer malware. An infostealer malware is a piece of malware that usually the user downloads through cracked software. Then it is executed on the victim's computer. It grabs every valuable piece of information, like credentials, browsing data, crypto wallets. Then it exfiltrates the data to a C2 infrastructure. For those not familiar with C2, it's basically a web server where the threat actor can get the data exfiltrated. Then individual logs are packaged together, and then they're sent to a Telegram channel to be sold or exploited further. Now, we can get into the class. And I want to start the class with the first lesson of today, which is no one's safe. Infostealers do not discriminate. So even if you operate some kind of malware, if your ObSec is not on point, you will get infected and thus handed your Uno reverse card. As I am a visual learner, I always need examples, so I will present to you the lineup for today. 2 bad examples and 2 good ones. 3 of those guys that got infected were infected by the red line infostealer. The last one was Meta. 3 of them were seen accessing one known C2 IP, and the last one accessed 3. 2 of them had their device located in the Netherlands, 1 in Germany, and the last one in Hong Kong. So let's start. First, we're going to start with the bad examples on how not to be a threat actor. The NoObSecs, those that are newbies in ObSecs. The first example is Quinn. Quinn had access to 4 cybercrime forums, 10 different stressor services. He had access to 10 suspicious IPs, and he had 2 brute force TXTs on his device. He was seen accessing at least 10 Snapchat accounts, which was not his, 5 Epic Games accounts, and then 10 Steam accounts. So he was mainly interested in social media and gaming. However, he was handed his Uno card by downloading a checker on a cybercrime forums. A checker is a tool used for credential testing, basically. So you get stolen credentials, and then it's too much, so you use the tool to test them to see which ones are still valid. But it was laced with malware, and that's how it got infected. Yeah, here's your Uno card. So we dabbled into the logs, which contains like browser data, any autofills, any files, and we found his government names, his date of birth, his exact address, his driving school, social media, and Twitch and GitHub accounts, and even his favorite porn star. So yeah, even if you operate some kind of malware, you will get infected if your ObSec is not on point. And that brings us to lesson number 2. ObSec isn't included with the malware toolkit, so get your ObSec on point. The second bad example here is you. He was located in Hong Kong and infected by the Meta infostealer. He too had access to 2 cybercrime forums and 5 stressor services. However, this one was seen as having accessed a Rise Pro C2 IP with 2 sets of different credentials. He was also seen as accessing 3 different Instagram accounts, which we know were not his, because the first one is a Korean-led company. The second one is an 18-year-old French student, and the last one was an Indian company on immigration and visa. He also accessed a PayScale instance from a South African company, which is used basically to give the salaries, and he was obviously not in the company. So we know he had some stolen accounts, and he too was handed his Uno reverse card by a checker again. This time, a LinkedIn checker. So again, we dabbled into the log, and first we were very interested in the machine because he had many softwares that were aimed to a corporate issued device used for development purposes. So we thought, seems like he was maybe doing some development task like apps or web apps, maybe. Then we went into the credentials, and we saw interesting patterns into the emails, usernames, and even accesses, which were all related to a single company, and were able to identify the company. It is a Beijing-based company, and we saw because the email was the exact same on the website. So yeah. Then continuing on the accesses, he had admin access to more than 50 private domains of the company, and more than 140 admin accesses to private and subnet IPs. However, we only found 3 sets of credentials across those 300 corporate and private domains. Yeah, I will let the silence speak for itself, but obviously do not do that. Continuing, if we sum up everything we had about you, he had most likely a corporate issued device used for development purposes. He was in a tech company and had admin access to private development domains. All of this points to maybe he was a high privileged developer inside the company. The problem is, he used the same corporate issued device for shady and corporate business. And as if that was not enough, he used the same credentials for both shady and business. And that's how you get triggered. Like, come on, if you use the same sets of credentials for 300 instances in corporate, at least have the decency to split your passwords for your shady business. For those of you that are not familiar, and if it's breaking news for you, I'm sorry, but do not use the same password for everything. So yeah, that was you. And what we can learn from the NoObSec is do not cross the streams. Use one device for your business and another one if you decide to act on your bad decisions. Now we've laughed with the NoObSec, now we can sweat with the skip tracer's nightmare. A skip tracer is someone you hire to find someone. So why we gave them that name is because they used obfuscation techniques for their identity, so it was a nightmare to basically identify them. The first difference we found between the nightmares and the NoObSec is that the NoObSec has more than 100 credentials and various individual credentials, such as like a Gmail account, a Netflix account, and then could have the shady in between. The nightmares, on the contrary, had only 30 to 50 credentials, all related to malicious or suspicious activity. And that's lesson number 4 of the class, which are dedicated device are the new gloves. The same way as a real-life crime, if you use glove, you protect your fingerprints. Here, a dedicated device would protect your identity from being identified if someone gets their hands on your device. So let's start with the first nightmare, which is Menya. Menya used many techniques to obfuscate his identity. First was the location of his device in Germany, but he was on the Moscow time zone, so maybe he was based in Russia or Eastern Europe. Then we found 3 different addresses in the US in the autofills of the log, one in Oregon, one in New Hampshire, and the last one in Florida. However, it would have been too easy, because the one in New Hampshire doesn't resolve. It's a fake one. And the 2 remaining ones are on sale. So nobody is living at those addresses at the moment. And it's been for like 10 years on sale. So we still don't know where he is located, nor where he is actually doing things. Continuing on the obfuscation techniques, he used burner emails, of which were celebrity usernames, pun of words, or even stolen emails that were posted on cybercrime forums. So nothing came out of those emails. Then we went on and we saw some names in the payment names you enter in the autofills. But we had Ryan Gosling, Morgan Freeman, and Jimmy Carter. Obviously, I doubt Mania is one of them. So we still don't know who is, basically. And that brings us to lesson number 5, is to hide well, mislead them first. Let them follow fingerprints that are not yours, build a maze they can escape, and every false trail will make your real you safer. Continuing on the autofill of the logs, we found many accesses to file sharing platforms with the noun of very suspicious files, basically cracked software. We had 81 unique file names. As you can see, no doubt, probably malware. Spread across more than 600 media fires URLs, 47 Bitbuckets, 12 Dropboxes, and many more. Sadly, the media fires were all dead, and the Dropbox as well. However, lucky us, the Bitbucket was still up as of yesterday. And we know it's his because in the autofills we found the username, the name of the project, and the name of each repo. If we click on one of those repos, we can see all the files inside, the name of the uploader, the number of downloads, and the date it was uploaded. Again, more proof as if it was not clear enough in the autofills. Everything leads to him. Across those Bitbuckets alone, we had more than 12,000 downloads, meaning potentially more than 12,000 infected. So at this point, we have an hypothesis. He's either a malware distributor, or he could be a white hat CTI researcher. So let's keep that in mind when we investigate. We thought, hey, the Bitbuckets is open, let's get one of the files and see what's inside. Sadly, it's password protected. And considering the passwords we had in the logs, it seems that he was using a password manager, but none of the password in the log worked. But hey, good point. He used a password manager. That's lesson number 6 for your OBSEC, guys. Use a password manager. So we went into the process list of the log and tried to find any traces of the password manager. In our quest, we found OpenVPN and Telegram, nothing unusual for the threat actor so far, but no trace of a password manager. However, in that same quest, we found a cute little notepad. And this is the Russian for ID and documents. And this, if you remember well, is pretty much the same as the username from the Bitbucket. So that could be a notepad containing the passwords. And yeah, you know what I mean. Do not put your passwords in a notepad. Mania, you disappointed us. Like, you made us believe you use a password manager, and then we find a notepad with the passwords. Sad as it is. Continuing. But we thought, you know what, let's try to crack open that file. So we used a top 12,000 password list. And bingo, the first one we used, Windows. And guess what? It was the same password for every single zip in the Bitkit, because everything is related to Windows. So why use a different password, you know? So inside the one we opened was 2 files. One very heavy executable, the second one, which is the installer. When we hashed both files, while the second one, the installer, was already identified in antiviruses and VirusTotal, the second one was still new and undiscovered yet. The idea behind that is that it's too heavy for the antivirus to crawl it and inspect it when it's uploaded on the Bitbucket, and that technique is called file pumping. You increase the size of the file so that when you upload it, it can be scraped and basically analyzed by the antiviruses automatically, which is why it was not found now. Let alone the files, Mania accessed more than 500 domains, of which 192 were related to CryptBot. And more than 25 of them followed the same format, but were not yet associated with that CryptBot. More than 100 of those domains were associated with communicating malicious files, and we even found in the autofill that same one that was flagged. So, continuing, he had accesses to ad services, ad pop-ups and spam ad services. He had access to 5 different YouTube channels in 3 different countries, and access to managing of video platforms and putting traffic into those ads. And lastly, he had access to user behavior analytics. All of this leads us to think that he was probably a traffer. Traffer is someone that directs traffic to malicious content, basically. How a traffer works is going into putting a malvertising campaign. So you have cracked software, put it inside a video or a website, use your ad services to put those websites out in the world and get the most people, infect those people, and then get all the logs and data into your malicious domain C2. So right now, the hypothesis of Mania being either a CGI researcher or a malware distributor still stands, but come on now. We've seen the traffer, we've seen the more than 500 domains, and then the files. Maybe you're still a CGI researcher, but you're heavily leaning into the dark side of the force. But even though you can be in the dark side of the force, even Darth Vader can like cute puppies and want a cute puppy homepage on Chrome. So that was Mania. And the last one we'll use as a case study on how to build a triple threat malware ecosystem, and that's Shiza. So take out your notepads if you want to get into the real malware deal, and let's get into it. Shiza was found to have access to those 4 domains, and the one that is very interesting is Raccoon and the extensions. He accessed logs and regs, which is not for normal people. It means he accessed the logs of people infected, and that means he was at least implicated in running the Raccoon Infostealer. Then we found admin creds for all those IPs, which are very suspiciously formatted. The first one is known to be associated with the Mystic malware. Second one with Private Loader. And the third one with the Asuka Trojan. And if you notice, all these IPs have a hash in them, and that's consistent with C2 patterns. When you infect a victim, usually the name of the victim is hashed. So you can identify, but it's still anonymized for other people. And this suggests he was operating at least for Raccoon, Mystic, Private Loader, and Asuka, but maybe even more, because the rest of these IPs were unknown yet, not associated with any piece of malware. Here we have an ecosystem with 4 known pieces of malware, and that's how it goes. The first one, the first step, is the malware loader. So you infect the device first, and then it serves as like a door to deliver any other malicious payloads. So here you infect the computer, it becomes a door, and then you can make enter anything else. So first, the Mystic is validated by the loader, it's inside, and then Mystics will come stealing the data, keylogging, and even ensure persistence sometimes. Here is for system exploitation. Then, second step, why not put the Infostealer Raccoon? Validated again by the loader, and its role is getting all the valuable data out of the computer, basically. So, logging credentials, cookies, wallets, anything you want, basically. And that's data extraction for you. Last but not least, you can make the Asuka Trojan enter. And this one maintains control and creates persistent backdoors to ensure persistence and control. And all of them build on the capabilities of the previous one, with the loader being the first step of infection, and it leads to maximum exploitation of the victim's target. And that brings us to lesson 8. Here, diversify to better conquer. Here, by building on the capabilities of the previous one every time, you augment the percentage of exploitation of the device, and then you can just come back if you want with just the backdoor of the Trojan. So to sum up the class here on ObSec is, well, threat actors are not all big bad guys in a hoodie in a cave, very dark, and god of codes. They can be people like us, doing mistakes, like our grandma putting the same password and their address out in the wild. So password, address, government names, and even getting Uno card reversed handed to them. And when they are indeed threat actors that are scary and good at code, they can still get infected in our case, and then that's a goldmine of information, because then we have access to their device, and we can see how to build a triple threat ecosystem, how to run a campaign through malvertising. We can discover new, previously unknown bitbuckets and files, and we can identify potentially new C2 instances. That's a gold mine. And that concludes the class of today. Thank you for not sleeping through. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.